Good morning. It is Monday, March 29th, 2021. I'm Karen from Simply Living for Him. I'm here to do my daily encouragement from God's Word. I hope you are all well today. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever said, oh, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time? Or, oh my goodness, I happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or something like that. We often have these situations happen to us and we think, if, I had just been a second earlier or a second later, this thing would have happened. I mean, I say it all the time. And I really wanted to point out today that there is no such thing as being in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time. You are simply in God's timing. And we have to remember that God is sovereign over every single second. Sometimes when we think about things like this, it helps us to really see God, how big and powerful He is, and it helps us to put things into perspective in our daily life. For instance, I remember I did a devotional on it a long time ago. There was this one night that I was just like thinking about this over and over and over. But you know how people say like for instance, my husband and we realized that the night we met, there were so many things that happened that night that I shouldn't have gone to, where I met him. I wasn't supposed to be there. But when we look back, we see how like God ordered it just perfectly for us to meet that night. And so we would say to our kids, if we didn't meet that night, you wouldn't be here. And, then I would think about it and be like, it's not just about that night, like us meeting. If you really, it goes back to every single second of his life and every single second of my life had to build upon everything to get to that moment. And then I start thinking, here's where I get a little bit, try to follow me. Then I start thinking, it's not even about every second in my life and his life, but what about his parents and my parents? Every single second of their lives had to line up perfectly so they could meet, so that we could exist. And then I start thinking, no, every single second of their parents' parents, now we're going back generations. And quite frankly, you would need to go all the way back to Adam and Eve and say, every single second of every single person's life has to flow in just a certain way in order to get to this moment today. Like, doesn't that blow your mind? As humans, I think it's so big to wrap our mind around that. We think of it just as in like our earthly terms, and we're just like, oh, I happen to be at the right place at the right time, and that was lucky. No, really, God is sovereign over all and every single second of every single person's life. Because think about how everybody affects each other. Like, it blows my mind to get to this moment here. God is so much bigger than we can even imagine when we think about that, how He has lined up every single moment of every single life. And so I want to remind you that, when we say, oh, I'm in the perfect place at the right time, that it's always in God's time. It says here in Proverbs 19 verse 21, you can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. It's so important to remember His sovereignty, especially in times like today where we feel like the world is going crazy. We have to remember that, God has been in control for thousands of years. He's still in control now. We have nothing to fear. He is literally in control of every single second. It says here in James chapter 4, starting in verse 14, how do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while and then it's gone. What you ought to say is, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and do this or do that. It is so important to remember that God has been in control of every single moment of every single life since the beginning of time. And none of those moments are an accident. They all have affected the next moment and the next moment, and not just in our life, but in every life. And they're all interwoven together in a very intricate story of God's people, which involves us. And so I like to think about things in the grander, bigger terms and realize I'm just a tiny person in the, grand scheme of this great world. Yet, I'm still I still matter to God. And so it's just amazing to think about how he has created each one of us. And so when something happens and, you feel like, wow, that was just such a coincidence, or that was so lucky that I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Remember that you were in God's place, in God's timing, every single second of your life. Even the seconds and the moments that you feel like, wow, there's a lot of things where you might say, if only I didn't do that, this bad thing wouldn't have happened. God is sovereign over all. He wills every moment in your life. And we have to remember that he is in control. He is guiding us each step of the way. And I don't know, it brings a great comfort to me to know that there are no mistakes, there are no accidents, there are no coincidences, that each and every moment is ordained by him. So I hope this encourages you today. And if it does, let me know. Comment wherever you're seeing this. Send me a message. I love hearing from you guys. And I will see you next time. Until then, I wish you all the blessings and joy in Jesus today.